Hi everybody, I am speaking to you from Seattle, and I am sitting in front of a power station and wanted to speak to you for a few minutes about power. So, your right to peaceably assemble is part of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. And it is disturbing and dismaying to see that the governor of the state of Washington, as well as other governors around the United States of America, abridging that right so freely. And not only freely, but without any acknowledgement that it is an abridgment of your First Amendment freedom to assemble. And the First Amendment is very important. I don't even support the United States Constitution. In fact, I even risked jail time because I wouldn't swear an oath to it once. But I am still quite very much a believer in the principles that it's founded on in a lot of ways. Not so much the actual founding of it, but I believe very strongly in the right of expression, the right to peaceably assemble, the freedom of religion, and the freedom and ability to practice religion, to worship, to exercise your spirituality. I believe very strongly in the freedom of the press as a member of the media. I believe very, very strongly in the First Amendment. That's one that they got right. One second. Sorry, I smoke cigarettes. I'm quitting cigarettes though. That said, let's talk about power for a minute. As a monarchist, I believe, and God save Queen Elizabeth, that power comes from the crown and is delegated. Parliament, all of the courts, they all get their right to make their rulings, make their judgments in the name of the crown, and the power that they get to do that comes from the crown. Parliament has its power to govern from the crown. It has the power to make law from the crown. It has the power to convene from the crown. The crown has the power to retract that power at any time, dissolve the government, overrule courts, overrule laws, dispense with laws. After all, the government, in all of its capacities and the entirety of the umbrella from the armed forces to the local police, all get their right to do their jobs, all get the power and authority that they have from one source and one source only, the crown. And the crown has the power to retract that at any time. In America, it's a little bit different. In America, the power is allegedly they the people. And so, in effect, what this is the people of America allowing their inalienable right, one of the inalienable rights in the First Amendment to be infringed upon, that is to say, taken from them. And it is a taking, by the way, because it's an elected official or a group of elected officials who are elected popularly based upon what is ever popular at the moment. And they are they are presuming a power that is beyond the jurisdiction of their office. It's beyond the purview of their office. It's beyond the powers that are listed to them in their job descriptions. they do not have the power to abridge your rights. They're called inalienable because that's a fancy word that means it cannot be taken from you. That is to say, made alien from you. That's why it's called inalienable. You don't lose these rights. Come what may, you don't lose these rights. And so, why is it that there is an order? And that's what it's being billed as. Whether or not it's legally this is, I've been trying to check into that, and it's hard to tell. It seems to be a gray area. It seems to be that there's an order out abridging your freedom of assembly. However good the reason, however legitimate the cause for concern that would prompt someone to give such an order that they're not empowered to give at all. But it's still a power grab, no matter how you look at it or slice it. And it's not as concerning because of, well, A, present circumstances, but B, it's not as concerning, B, because one can trust, at least in Washington State, to appoint Jay Inslee not to abuse that power. But it's not so much Jay Inslee I'm concerned about. It's one or two governors later, and different circumstances, and the precedent that is set by the action taken in response to the coronavirus, where someone can point to that as a precedent. In other words, something to stand on that was not previously there, and justify in the future irresponsible, arbitrary, selfish, unlawful, unethical actions, and point to that as precedent. Now, previous to this, and believe me when I say that this is unprecedented, this whole situation, previous to this, the First Amendment protected your right to freedom of assembly. Now, if that's abridged, every person who swears an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America will be swearing an oath to a document that's inherently lying to you, demonstrably lying to you, because clearly your right to freedom of assembly is alienable. Not inalienable. It evidently is alienable. And it sets up a legal conundrum, a paradox. And because it sets that paradox up, it allows a window of opportunity for a short-sighted or unscrupulous, or both, governor or other person in the future to grab for either more of your rights or grab the same right back. When will that right be returned to you? When it's lifted? Cool. When the ban on, say, 250 people gathering is lifted. On board with that, but here's the problem. The ban was already imposed without complaint, and it was imposed without acknowledgement that it was even an extraordinary event, and even if it were an extraordinary event, it would still be an inalienable right that was infringed, and a punishment should occur for that. So, in the future, after the ban is lifted and after we're all coronavirus free, but not, without our coronas, either drinking or on our heads, but, or my head at least, what about the future? If there is, God forbid, a terrorist attack, and God forbid Muslims are blamed for that again, what's to stop a short-sighted, unscrupulous, or both governor of Washington State in the future from restricting Muslims and giving them an order to stay at home? The precedent's already been set once, and in both instances you would have a public under threat, an imminent threat, perceived, panic. You would have a person in authority imposing a restriction on movement and on assembly upon a group of people who are potentially in the case of coronavirus, a risk for further contagion, or in that hypothetical, a risk of terrorism, which is an imminent threat to the public. And in both instances, you have impetus, you have cause. The only thing that you don't have in the second scenario, the hypothetical, the terrorist attack, God forbid, the only thing you don't have is the legal capacity to do that, of course. A governor to do that would be unconscionable because of the First Amendment and because of the freedom of assembly. Well, now, that future crazy governor can point to the response to coronavirus and say, actually, I have legal precedent to protect the public from imminent threat and suspend and abridge their rights as necessary in order to do that. However noble Jay Inslee's reasons are for imposing a ban of 250 people or more, it's not him I'm worried about. I make this video outside right now. Despite the stay-at-home order, I've walked to this power station to make my point that what I believe very strongly you should do, and I know it's basically bullshit because, believe me, I've interned for Congress before. You're going to get a form letter that's not been written by any human being specifically, but by a group of people like ages ago, and it's going to have a machine that will simultaneously print it out, put it in the envelope, address it to you, and then put it in a little stack that all a staff member has to do is just pop them in the mail. So you're really better off calling and speaking to an actual human being for 30 seconds than you are writing. But I suggest that you reach out to your elected officials and demand that a clarification be made that that's not an order to stay home. That is a suggestion, a guideline, strongly suggested, and one that, by the way, you should all follow, because coronavirus is kind of legit and you need to be careful. Please do not be a risk to others. But don't let that risk or that fear that you might feel, actual or perceived, tempt you at saying that the order, the ban, if you will, on gatherings and crowds of 250 people or more, or even imposing consequences on venues or organizations, etc., that may convene these things, is in any way justifiable. It's not. Don't let that fear tempt you into giving up your rights. It's easy to do. It's easy. What you must do is be calm, stay home, and write that letter. Rather, make that phone call, preferably. I sit in front of a power station because, as a monarchist, I believe that the power to rule and govern comes from God. God bestows that upon the crown. And in government, all right to govern and to rule, rather just to govern, because the crown rules, government governs. All right to govern comes from the crown, and the crown can retract that at any time. In America, you are allegedly, even though I don't believe it's even possible to do, or rather to have a group of collectively sovereign people, but you're allegedly collectively sovereign, they the people, and all that, in order to form a more perfect union, do establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, fail on both counts really, provide for the general welfare, I would argue that's pretty much a fail, provide for the common defense, I'd say that's overkill, promote the general welfare, what did they do? They ordained, which they weren't empowered to ordain, and established, which they weren't empowered to establish, a Constitution of the United States of America. Well, I don't believe people are collectively sovereign. For all those reasons. and because you cannot go to your governor or to your president and you cannot say, hey, you just overstepped the line. You can do that only via election with a public vote, which takes time, money, energy, a campaign, resources. And if you have to take a vote to tell someone and reprimand them or fire them for overstepping the confines of their office, or to give them a warning that no matter how noble their reasons, they must issue a clarification, that was a suggestion and not an order. If you don't make it clear where their offices and the extent of their powers of their offices end, then what you are doing is you are giving that power to them, and via legal precedent set during this unprecedented event. The thing about an unprecedented event is that it sets the precedent for the future, hence the phrase unprecedented. If you don't make that clear, then once they are able, and once there's an avenue, and legally sustained, and legally said, no, that's legit by a precedent, once that avenue exists for them to take that power, or to take that right from you in the future, or to abridge that right for you in the future, if perhaps under unscrupulous reasons, or unethical, then that's a cause for concern. So, what I suggest you do is reach out as best you can. And you are allegedly, in America, collectively sovereign. So please try and remind them of that, even though, unrelatedly, that's actually an impossibility. You can't be, hence why I'm a monarchist. But, while we're pretending that you can be, it's with great irony that a monarchist is telling you to look out for your constitutional rights. But since I don't support your constitution, I'm completely impartial to the election, I have no preferences for candidates, I don't vote, I don't donate. I am above left and right, I am outside of your political system. I am within America, but not part of America. And so therefore, I am completely credentialed and empowered to speak truth to stupid, and to tell you, ironically enough, the guy who will not swear an oath to your constitution, to tell you the truth about it. And the truth is, whatever good things that come out of that constitution that everyone appreciates, please act to protect. Because what you do now will affect the future dramatically. Or don't do. To do nothing is often the best course of action, but sometimes it's the wisdom to know when to take action and when not to take action that determines, well, quite a bit. I hope you all have a great day. Please stay safe, and please wash your hands regularly and all that. Now that I've made my point and I've demonstrated that was not an order but a suggestion, demonstrating my sovereignty, if you will, hence I'm going to go back to my apartment, and I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'm going to put on Netflix. I hope you all take care. God bless you. Long live Queen Elizabeth, and stay safe. Peace.